Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to this first viewing reaction to Doctor Who Series 13 or Season 39, Episode 1, Flux, Chapter 1, The Halloween Apocalypse, or Doctor Who Flux, Chapter 1, The Halloween Apocalypse. I'm recording this just a couple of minutes before 10 to 11 p.m. on Sunday, the 31st of October. I've recently watched the episode with my family. A little bit later than everybody else will be, almost everybody else, because I was working quite late. But regardless, so the Halloween Apocalypse and how Doctor Who Flux starts out. For once, that was my phone. So how does this episode start out? And hold up, this might possibly be the best first episode of the Jodie Whittaker era, and I'm already a fan of The Woman Who Fell to Earth, and I liked Spyfall Part 1 as well. I thought that was a really great episode. I still retain the 9 out of 10 scores for both those episodes, although Spyfall Part 2, actually maybe not actually, maybe Part 1 might be the 8 out of 10. It's that or Part 2, and then I think I lowered that. I'm not entirely sure. Go and check the Revisitation review. That came out in May. But yeah, I think the two Whittaker series openers prior to this have been pretty good, especially the first one, Woman Who Fell to Earth. But this episode felt particularly strong, and yet also still felt like a setup episode for what's coming along. As we're establishing characters and introducing some, putting some into play. I won't say all of the characters, but let's just say that some characters, such as the Sontarans, for example, do feel like they are just being introduced here, and they will play a bigger role later in the series. For instance, the Sontarans are due to make a bigger appearance and more important role in the next episode. It will definitely be very focused on them next time round. But there's a couple of other characters and creatures introduced in this episode that are definitely going to play more of a role later on, probably. Like, I won't say who, but um, there's a couple who will probably play a role later on, and there's some who do play a key role here that might pump back up again later on, but we'll see. The opening of the episode I thought was particularly strong. It felt very much like a Doctor Who, a Doctor Who-y opening, or something that would happen in a Doctor Who episode. It was pretty strong, and I think, say what you like about Chris Chibnall, but I think by this point he's kind of got it. Um, you could argue he didn't have it before, but I think we can say he has got it. He's got the style. You can debate whether it's good or not, but I think he's got the style by now. He's got the groove. Shame it's the last series for him, but oh well. He got the groove, and it's a short one as well. But he's got the groove by now. I think that's probably what works with the third series. Is, well, maybe not so much for Stephen Moffat, but for the most part, the third series seems to work pretty well for the creatives or for the actors. And I think certainly this episode is a promising start. Then again, I suppose Spyfall and Woman Who Fell to Earth did as well. But this one is a particularly interesting as it sets up the six-part story. We get introduced to all of these characters. Some of them are going to play a bigger role later on. Others are playing a bigger role throughout. And I don't think there's one, unless the Kazava, the dog creature, unless he only appears in this episode, maybe once or twice later on. I don't think there's going to be many characters who played an important role in just this episode. I think they're going to come back in other episodes later down the line, like a proper six-part story. And this is definitely very much akin to the classic series 6-part stories or 12-part story, as the episodes are twice as long. This is the new Daleks master plan, but it's series length. So technically, it's the new Trial of the Time Lord. And you know what? Maybe the Doctor goes through even more trials in this series than she would have to in Trial of the Time Lord. That was a joke. The new villain, the Swarm. Oh, he's really interesting. Quite a creepy creature. I think he's going to be a formidable foe as we go along, and the actor does a really great job. He does come off as kind of like a bit of a master character, but with the powers of Fenric from The Curse of Fenric, the penultimate classic series story from season 26 from 1989. Do check that one out. It's really good. Really, really good. In fact, it's my friend Matt Moy's favourite story of the show, even surpassing City of Death, which is also an amazing story. But yeah, the Swarm seems to be a pretty formidable foe. And it seems like the Division might have had him captive or something. I'm not gonna I won't spoil too much from the episode, but the Vision looked like they had him captured, and then he escapes and takes on a new form. And yeah, it looks like the Division have some sort of are going to have some sort of role in this series after we were introduced to them in the last series, and the Doctor's trying to find out more about them through the dog person, and we also introduced to Vinda, who's been rumored, speculated, and rumored to perhaps be a member of the Division or former member of the Division. Um, but yeah, we're also introduced to Vinda in this episode, played by Jacob Anderson, who was the special guest at the Comic Con panel. And he doesn't have a huge amount to do in the episode, but I think, yeah, again, they're setting up his character for what would come later in the series, I'm guessing. Same with some of the other characters. But we are also introduced to this character who supposedly met the Doctor and Yaz before, or at least the Doctor anyway, early in her timeline, and then something happens to her. I won't say what in this reaction. I think it's better to talk more spoilery in the review when I eventually get around to doing it, partly due to timing. But yeah, I think this is a pretty interesting first episode. There's a lot going on in 50 minutes, and it still feels pretty fun and engaging and enjoying. Quite a fun episode. Um, Special mention to John Bishop as Dan Lewis. It's a great start for him. I think he's going to be a fun companion, a great character, and I really liked how we were introduced to him, trying to be like a tour guide at this museum he doesn't actually work at. We're also introduced to this character who's, apart from what I hear, is a historical character from Liverpool who dug tunnels underneath the city just for no apparent reason, just to get over the grief of losing his wife. And some of the tunnels were put into use like by the railways and stuff, but mostly not really. They weren't really used for anything. It was just digging them. So from the start of the episode where we meet him, it seems like he's going to play a more important role later on in the series, perhaps. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Something I really loved in this episode was the Dr. Yaz relationship by now, because they've been traveling with each other for a while, following the events of Revolution of the Daleks, plus the previous two series overall. And they seem to have made kind of like that bond that we see with quite a few of the Doctor companion relationships that usually, especially the ones that go on for a long time, like the second Doctor Jamie, maybe first Doctor and Stephen, fourth Doctor Sarah Jane, 5 and Tegan, to a lesser extent 6 and Perry, and 7 and Ace to a lesser extent with those two, possibly 10 and Rose, and 12 and Clara, and 11 with Amy and Rory, more so Amy. But yeah, I think they definitely got the Doctor companion dynamic down to a T with those two in this episode. Plus, also with the introduction of Jeff Dan also being quite fun. So whilst we won't have a full episode where it is just the Doctor and Yaz, this is definitely the closest we'll get besides that comic relief thing back in March. But yeah, the dynamic between the two is really well, and I also like that Yaz is starting to question the Doctor a little bit as well. Actually, I recently watched Evil the Daleks' animation, the animated episodes of Evil the Daleks, and I liked how Jamie was questioning the second Doctor in that as well. So, despite them knowing their Doctors for quite a while, I do like how sometimes the companions will question them when they feel like it, and I don't mean like, oh, what's this, what's that. I mean they will actually question their decisions and what they're hoping to achieve, but not in an outright betrayal sort of way, like in Kill the Moon, but in a more like not certain if this is going to work, but I'll trust you. And no, that's normal. That yeah, that they're hiding something. There's a big secret that they're hiding, and the Doctor is and the companions aren't sure how to respond to that. And I like how that's tackled in this episode. And I think I also really like Jodie Whittaker's performance in this episode. This could be one of her strongest performances. She's just brilliant. throughout, and it's really great. There's the moments of where her Doctor is, the 13th Doctor as per usual, a little bit a little bit awkward, but still quite serious when she needs to. But I think they up the seriousness and the desperation of her character quite a bit, as well as also the mysterious side, which is pretty cool. I like that, and I like how maybe elements of the Seventh Doctor are slowly sleeping in to the personality of 13. Like she starts off like a bit more of a silly, wacky, socially awkward Doctor, um, very much similar to having some personality similarities to 10 and 11, with her more easygoing, wacky person. Well, not wacky, but awkward personality, but with a couple of serious moments. And then series 12, she got a bit more serious and a little bit darker, and um, in places, especially Haunting of Villa Diodati, which is the best episode of that series still, in my opinion. And now it's looking like we're incorporating more of that mysterious side into the character in her search for the division and her quest for answers. And but still maintaining the character we've known so far for the last 3 years. It's been over 3 years since the 13th Doctor arrived on screens. Well, not including her appearance in Twice Upon a Time. It's nearly four for that. But yeah, I liked how things were handled in this episode. It was a very strong opener. I won't say it's 100% perfect because it is still a very set up episode. There's a lot of things going on, and it does feel very full. And that is a problem with Tris Chibnall episodes since the start of series 12, is that his stories have been filling chock a block with story stuff to do past a couple of episodes, namely the historical episodes. Series 11 had the opposite problem. It didn't have as much going on in some of the episodes, and um, they didn't really have as much going on. It didn't feel as bulky in places. Some of them actually felt a little bit empty at times. The thing with this series being a six-part story is that you can have all of these great ideas and you can put them into a six-part story in a structure that works. And I think if the series is able to structure out the rest of the storyline as well as it can to the extent of the episodes require it to, like how this episode does, I think we're in for a very good story. I think we're in for a great story, possibly even one of the strongest stories of the show. If we can pull off if the series can pull off if the rest of the series can pull off what it needs to do as good as episode one did, then yeah, I think we're looking at one of the best stories of the series, perhaps of the show. I mean, possibly. Um, yeah, I think this one definitely, it was still a very setty uppy episode, as I mentioned earlier, but it definitely did it in a really good way, at least on first viewing um, opinion. Maybe it might appear a bit more stuffed and overcrowded on a later viewing, especially and even more so when more of the episodes come out, depending on how those later episodes go as well, of course, in the latter's case. But certainly, as for right now, I think it handles all of these multiple character story ideas and characters all coming together. I think it handles it in a really good way as the start, the setup, the beginning, etc. And more is going to happen in the next couple of weeks, and it would look very exciting. So, Doctor Who Flux has begun, and I think the Halloween Apocalypse is a really great start to the series. Looking forward to next week with War of the Sontarans. That'll be a very interesting episode. Crimea, Mary Seacole, Sontarans on the battlefield, and also Sontarans in Liverpool. We're going to be time hopping and location hopping quite a bit in this series by the looks of it. So, yeah, that's another thing that kind of was a thing in Series 12 and Resolution in the 2019 New Year special to a lesser extent. But yeah, it looks like it's gonna again. It could be some like the whole lots of ideas being shoved into the episode. Maybe the fact that it's six parts will actually help expand on that, as opposed to cramming everything into a one or two part story, and then being like this maybe might have needed a second or third or even fourth episode. Um, so yeah, the fact that it's going to be a six-part story actually might help with that. Then again, on the other hand, that does mean that's also the excuse to do lots of things at once in said six-part story and in each of those episodes. Like I said, if the other episodes can pull it off, then I think we're in for a real treat this series. We'll see how it goes. That's it from me. Thank you so much for watching this reaction. I will try and get a review of this episode done at some point. I've got to do episode 4 for the Universals, so I definitely have to do it within that week or fortnight, between a week between 4 and 5, episodes 4 and 5, or within the fortnight or so afterwards. Hopefully. But yeah, I will react to each episode on the main channel here, and I'll do, you know what, I've decided to do reviews of each individual episode anyway. Bit like how I did Trial of the Time Lord on the Retro channel. I just did the 4 Mysterious Planet, Mind Warp, Terror of the Vervoids, Ultimate Foe, split up the 4 segments of that 14-part story, just made it a bit easier. And if I did Torchwood reviews, Children of Earth and Miracle Day, each episode will get their own review. Same with the finales of Series 1 and 2, and saying Sarah Jane Adventures, they're each 2-part stories. They're all stories. Class, the middle 2 episodes, they would stay single part reviews instead of double joint one because it's a 2-parter. But yeah, so what I'll do with Series 13 is I'll review each episode, similar to when I did the Trial of the Time Lord segments reviews individually, and then the ranking perhaps overall thoughts of the series. Would not include the specials. They'll get their own ranking when they're done, part of their own mini-series ranking, like the Series 4 and 7 ones. Right, okay, as I was saying, that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time for War of the Sontarans, or Flux Chapter 2, War of the Sontarans. I'll see you guys then, or whatever comes up next. Goodbye.